just say no. Kids are too smart for that. They want science behind that, why they shouldn't be doing it. These kids could get a hold of this and that it was such high potency. Talk to your kid. Don't sit down at the dining room table and say, now we're going to have a talk. For a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. Watch
Step Up to Save Our Children today.
Hello, and welcome to Step Up to Save Our Children, the podcast where we have honest conversations to help parents, schools, and communities protect and empower the next generation. My name is Denise Mayer, and today's episode focuses on a challenge affecting families everywhere: teen driving. Risky decisions and the pressures that young people face every day behind the wheel. Joining us today is Taylor Small from Students Against Destructive Decisions to talk about the impactful Shifting Gears program. We'll discuss the impact of THC and alcohol, distracted driving, peer pressure, prevention, education, and how students can become leaders in creating safer communities. This is an important conversation for parents, educators, and teens alike, because one decision can change your life forever. Taylor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I know this is such an important topic, and I want to just jump in, but let me share with our listeners a little bit more about you. So Taylor Small is the Ohio State Coordinator for Students Against Destructive Decisions, or SADD, where they lead statewide efforts to empower young people to make safe and responsible choices. Based in Lorain County, Taylor works directly with schools, law enforcement, and community partners to expand SADD programming and increase student engagement across Ohio. They play a key role in implementing Shifting Gears, an evidence-based traffic safety program focused on preventing impaired and distracted driving among our teens. Through trainings, events, and partnerships, Taylor helps equip both students and adults with the tools to reduce risky behaviors and promote safer communities. So thank you, Taylor, for being here today.
Of course, of course.
Well, this topic, particularly right now in Cincinnati, we've been having a lot of rain. I'm sure that's probably typical of Ohio, but but normally the end of May brings a lot of driving. As soon as the weather turns nice and the sun's out, man, kids are in their cars, either when they're finishing school or now heading into summer. So I think this information is so critical because our kids are distracted by so many things that we need to discuss today. So with that, let's jump right in and tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you became involved with Students Against Destructive Decisions, and used to be called Students Against Drunk Driving, and it morphed into this, which covers a lot more things. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and about how you got involved.
Awesome. So, like Denise said, I'm Taylor Small. I'm the state coordinator for Students Against Destructive Decisions in Ohio. My work focuses on helping students build leadership skills, creating safer schools and communities through peer-to-peer education. We really want the students to be the advocates. We know that students are going to lead their peers, and speaking up and making the best choices for each other is going to be the best way to promote safer decisions. I've had a strong passion for promoting safety and positive decision making for teenagers. Growing up, I was heavily influenced by both of my parents. My mom was a school health teacher, and my father is a police sergeant. So conversations about student health, safety, responsibility, smart decision making, they were huge in my household. My dad seeing some of the things that happen on the road, my mom seeing some of the things that happen in a health classroom. And I became involved with SADD just about 6 months ago. I love what we empower these youth to do. I love that we are a peer-to-peer agency. We focus on mobility safety, traffic safety, but we also empower leaders. And I'm so excited to be a part of an agency that like really pushes students forward in more than just one aspect.
Absolutely. And I think to what you're saying, values what the kids are saying, what values what their opinion is about things. I think that's so important because preaching at them never really works very well. So the peer to peer always works so much better. I know that in so many other different areas. But why do you think the program is especially important to students today?
So students today are facing constant pressure. I mean, we have social media, we have distractions, mental health challenges, substance use, risky driving behaviors, especially the pressure to fit in. I mean, social media itself changed the game when it came to how students actually interact with each other. Um, I know back when I was in high school, it was how many likes somebody got on a post, you know. Um, there's a lot of pressure behind it because they're so chronically online. Um, and programs like SAD help students slow down and critically think about their choices while also reminding them they're not alone. We're creating a space that they can feel authentically themselves. They can, grow in creative spaces, but they can also engage and be student leaders and feel like they're a part of something that's a change. Giving students this ability to become change makers in a society where they're told how to act or how to look or this is how you're supposed to fit in. We want to change that for them. We want to give them a space where they can be authentically themselves and create positive, moving forward, like ways to create safer environments for students their age.
So, what would you say with the Shifting Gears program? What does that look like? What is different, I guess, of that than what you previously had been doing?
So, shifting gears is something that is mainly in Ohio, but we as SAD use it in all of our states. So, it's a triple A created curriculum. It is evidence based, and shifting gears focuses on the full name is Shifting Gears: The Blunt Truth About Marijuana and Driving. But
Okay.
we also focus on how THC, which is the chemical in marijuana, affects the developing brain, what
Hmm.
actually happens, what system it's going to, how it differs from alcohol, why it stays in their system longer, stuff that these students don't necessarily know. They just know that I see a parent or an uncle or a grandparent or a friend using the substance. They don't actually know what they're putting in their bodies. They just know that "Well, my friends are doing it."
Well, and the effect that it's having on their motor skills, I'm sure, isn't something they really have thought about. They probably, for the most part, have grown up with the concept of a designated driver and, what alcohol can do and the problems that, ensue with that. But I don't want to say this is a new concept because it's certainly not totally new, but it is certainly time to talk about it in more depth because it does affect their driving. And you see so many drivers on the road where you smell it more than you even know that what you're seeing. And I don't know, and we'll jump into this too because of the law enforcement part, but how that is even determined when there's been a wreck or crash, and there's a person involved. There's obviously a person involved, right, too, but that what it actually, how they, with a breathalyzer, they could tell what alcohol amount was in a person's system. This is a little more complicated. Can
Right.
you expound on that a little bit?
So actually, a lot of people don't actually know the full term for THC. So THC is tetrahydrocannabinol.
Hmm.
That is the chemical. Um, and what we focus on is expressing what system you're actually looking towards. So we have something called an endocannabinoid system, and it focuses on the three M's, which is the motivation, the memory, and the mood. So those are your three big things that get affected when you absorb THC. And what's different between alcohol and THC, alcohol is within the bloodstream. THC is stored in fatty tissue. So when we can take a breathalyzer for alcohol, you almost have to take a urine test for THC. And when people say like, okay, it's been 2 weeks, it's probably still going to show up. THC gets released within a period of time, and it's not necessarily like a specific period. So we like to try and explain what they're actually doing. Our bodies actually produce a chemical, anandamide. I want to make sure that that's the correct chemical.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. You're right.
I was like,
You're right.
all of the mides.
I know. I
Um,
know.
but that is whenever like you get an A on a test, that's what releases. That's what gives you I feel really good. This is the
Mhm.
good thing.
Right.
I want to do this more often.
Mhm.
Well, tetrahydrocannabinol, that is just a lovely word.
It is amazing word. Yeah. Yeah.
But it goes onto the same receptors. So it starts to, now that becomes your way of, oh, I feel good.
Uh-huh.
And what people don't understand is have you ever heard of runner's high?
Mhm. Sure.
So anandamide is what you would perceive when you get a runner's high.
Mhm.
Because it connects to the same receptor, it's kind of giving that same feeling,
Mhm.
but because the longer you use it, your body doesn't produce as much anandamide because the THC is connecting to that receptor.
It's taken its place. And so
Correct.
what has happened is true joy, natural joy that we have with our brains is now corrupted. And, so when that happens, I know in kids, young people particularly, with their brains underdeveloped at this stage, most of them, high school, college even, um, can get behind the wheel of a lethal weapon and not have the wherewithal to make the right decisions, maybe run a red light, maybe, take a curve way too sharply. I mean, there's so many things that can cause a crash or a wreck. I noticed on your website we don't call those accidents anymore. We try not to say accident. So, and we'll jump into that in a minute too. But um, the I think we always thought about drunk driving as the alcohol driving, and we don't really think of the THC as drunk driving, but it's impaired driving. And that's what we have to kind of change words out, that. Um, so, how do you go about with this program? Is it something that's instituted at the school level where the kids can go to a class, or how does that work?
So we are, like I said, AAA is the one that created this curriculum. We are the only trainers of this curriculum. So what we do is we'll go out to police stations or educational service centers within Ohio, and um, we'll train people on this curriculum. They can take it into schools. They could take it into driver's education classes and just teach the curriculum to these students. Our biggest thing is getting the information out there. I mean, before I started at SAD, if you would have said tetrahydrocannabinol or endocannabinoid, it would have gone right over my head. So we just want to give them the tools to succeed. That's really what we're looking for. I have no issue going into a school and teaching this. I love to be in front of the students. But again, like we're looking for peer to peer. We want students to be our, forefront. We want them to really push this forward. I know for me specifically, I'm always looking for Ohio student leaders. We have quite a few that have come out of the woodworks, and we're so excited to start working with them. But students are the future. They're the ones that, go on to do great things. We were all students once. We
Yeah,
all have.
it's all true. And we want them to succeed, and we also want them to be alive to do it. So
Correct.
I think that message of, I know when my grandson got his driver's license and he got behind the wheel of the car, I mean, I was remember saying to him, "You're driving a lethal weapon here. This can kill you, this can kill people." And I think that, I'm sure those are all the things that you cover with this, particularly the distracted driving. So you can have the distraction of your brain that you just talked about, where you're distracted because you're doing the THC. And of course, then you're distracted. You got your phone there and you might have 5 or 6 kids in your car. Everybody needs a ride to go to wherever it is that they're going. Now the radio, well, I don't even know that they have the radio anymore, but somebody's got their phone on, whatever. There's music going and, a lot loud music going, and then you got a whole carload of kids. What has Ohio and other places done to put some guardrails on these new drivers that are headed out? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So one of the things that, I've heard a lot of is new drivers cannot have more than one friend, or they can't have any friends unless it's family members in the
Mhm.
car. And what I want people to understand is when we ask students, what's the biggest distraction behind the wheel? Everyone says, oh, my phone, my phone.
Yeah.
That's not true. The
Okay.
biggest distraction behind the wheel is actually people in the car, because
Okay.
it all it takes is, oh my gosh, look at this new post, or like, I just
Sure.
got this text, your eyes dart.
Right.
And what we try and, I try and explain as many facts as possible. So I'll always say when I'm tabling, if you look at your phone for 5 seconds and you're going 55 miles an hour, you look away from your field of vision from the road for an entire football field.
Wow. That is an incredible thing. Really, think about that. I mean, I'm really thinking about a football field. That's a lot of distance.
It's huge.
It's
And
huge.
you never know what can change in that amount of time.
Right.
I mean, 5 seconds, right? You don't think about 5 seconds. You're like, I'm
No.
just going to glance real quick,
Yeah.
Uh, it and coming back to the shifting gears, we try and explain, like, back when prohibition hit, alcohol became legal. So people started to think, oh, I can drink and drive.
Mhm.
No. And we as a society have done a great job about changing and shifting that perception.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, we're starting back over with THC and marijuana.
We
Everyone
are.
again, like, okay, well, now it's legal. No, it's still impairment. So we try and put out as many facts about um, all the different kinds of things that take your attention away from the road. Um, Especially THC, it shrinks your field of vision. That's terrifying.
Terrifying. I agree. And the
Again,
other
you never know what can pop in front of you. There's deers everywhere in
Oh
Ohio.
gosh, no kidding. Everywhere. Yeah, and they cause serious damage. Yeah,
Correct.
my son-in-law's aunt lives more out in the country, and one went through a windshield and killed her.
Yeah.
One of the deer. So I mean, you just don't know exactly. And I think with drivers, young drivers that have had very little experience with, shifting or turning or whatever, they overcorrect and do a lot of things that, end up in serious crashes. And yeah, I don't think I know parents, of course, are concerned when they have a new driver. I get that. But they go through the driving school if they can afford it, and get the behind the wheel and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, that doesn't very much prepare them for what's ahead once they really start driving on their own without a parent in the car, or this teacher person. And I know they have to be reduced on the number, but that only is for a certain amount of time. Their brains still aren't developed, and now they've got a carload full, just like you said. And somebody says, "Oh, look at this," or somebody drops their phone, and then they go to retrieve it. Oh Lord, there's so many things that can happen, um, and then they have to live with that for the rest of their life if they're not incarcerated due to it.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my dad's a police sergeant, and stuff that he used to tell me growing up as a teenager, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, you're being overprotective, but he would never let me leave the house on the 4th of July. And my friends would be like, why? Like, that's so weird. And he would always say to me, like, I trust you. I don't trust other drivers. I don't trust that they're making the correct decisions. And at the time, I was so upset with him. I wanted to go hang out with my friends. I wanted to have fun. But looking back, like doing the work that I do now, I do believe that that is the truth, because you can always know, like, I'm safe, I'm sober behind the wheel, I'm making the best choices. But like, what if the person on the opposite side of the road is not?
Well, I will tell you a story. It's a personal story. And my niece, who was 36 years old, was on the road was on the 3rd of July, and she was going to pick up a bike because hers had been stolen in Columbus. And she was going to do some kind of a bike thing. I can't remember exactly. And so she went to her friend's house to borrow a bike. On the way back, I think it was on 52, or no, 50, I guess. A young woman, a young mother, had come out of a bar, had been there all day, and had consumed THC and alcohol, was completely impaired, hit her head on. They could not get her out of the car. They finally did. They got her to the hospital, airlifted her to Columbus. This was in Chillicothe, and she did not make it. She was killed, and that woman went to jail for 8 years. And now she's out. And I'm not going to get into all that, but my point is Annie's life's over. There's no coming back from anything with her, obviously. And her family did get Annie's law on the books in Ohio that you can't, get behind the wheel, supposedly. But that was on the 4th of July weekend. And her family, some of her family had flown in from California, and they were here at my house, and we had to go face all that. So you're right. Your dad was right. 4th of July is not a good time for young people to be on the road. But I don't think parents in general would even know that or think about that.
Well, and actually, something that we do at SAD, so these used to be called the 100 Deadliest Days of Summer for teenage drivers. So something we push out at SAD, and like we're trying to push it now, is the 100 Safest Days of Summer. We are trying to promote the safe driving practices so that we can almost change that saying from being 100 deadliest days to being the 100 safest days. I mean, teenagers are out of school. They want to go have fun. I know up by me is Cedar Point. We want you guys to be safe and go and enjoy your teenage years, but making those safe choices, but also trusting the other people on the road. That's kind of what I'm taking from my dad is it's not about you. You
And
can
you
make
can't
the best
always.
choices.
No,
Correct. But
no.
you have to trust that other people are too.
Well, and I think that you had to be cognizant that, they always taught defensive driving, and I mean, in Annie's case, this woman came across a double yellow and just hit her head on. Two
Right.
big cars, and Annie's wasn't big enough, I guess. And so, yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that. Annie was at her house. She wasn't drinking, partying, anything. She was just going over to pick up a bike, and
Right.
this happened. So, I mean, there's no way to safeguard yourself totally against something like that. But on the other hand, too, a lot of the crashes and wrecks that are not major like that, some things can be avoided, obviously. And so let's talk for a minute about the dropping the A in accidents. I loved, I looked that up, and I had listened to, now wait a minute, to Carol Lucio, I guess, on a couple other webinar things, and dropping that A word makes so much sense to me. So you want to expound on that a little bit?
Yes, we love Carol. Carol actually used to be the Ohio State coordinator until she had passed the role on. She's now the Kentucky State coordinator. And I agree. I mean, let's stop calling them accidents. If you're making choices and getting behind the wheel and doing these things, becoming distracted or being under the influence, it's not an accident. You're setting yourself up for failure. You are creating this ability to put yourself in that position. So we really want to change it. It's a crash. You
It's a
are,
crash, right?
whether you're hitting a mobilized street pole, or if you're hitting another vehicle or hitting someone walking across the street,
Mhm.
it's a crash. You're
It's a
hitting
crash.
something.
Well,
Um,
and as she says, it's not random. It's
no,
predictable. and preventable. And I think crash communicates, she says, cause and effect, where an accident suggests inevitability, like, well, it was going to happen no matter what. And that's just not true. But we do say that all the time. Oh, they were in a terrible accident. Annie was in a terrible accident. No, she was in a terrible crash that took her life.
Correct.
And, that's why I think this is so timely to get this podcast out to remind parents that the need obviously and always is to talk to their own kids. But
Yes.
any opportunity that there is for peer-to-peer, so if they talk to their child, then maybe that child, can talk to some other children and not get in a car. So what would you suggest, or what do you say for when kids know something is not right with the driver? Like they should maybe not have gotten in the car with this driver. And that's a hard thing. You're in the car now with other kids, you're having fun, whatever, but you know that this driver should not be driving.
Mhm.
And it's awkward. But
Yeah.
what would you suggest? What could they do at that point?
So something that I've always kind of wanted to push out is it's your life. You are
Mhm.
making choices that affect your well-being. So if you cannot sit there and say, like, I need you to stop, I need to get out of this car, I do not feel safe, you are ultimately making choices on your behalf. And it comes back to that, like, fitting in.
Mhm.
Most students don't want to upset their peers because they want to fit in. They
Right.
don't want to be, for lack of a better term, blackballed from their friend groups. But I mean, I hate to say this, but I'd prefer to be blackballed from a friend group than have someone make that call to my parents.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, and I say this all the time, if you're making risky decisions, your parent is going to rather get a call that, hey, you need to come pick them up,
Mhm.
than the other type of call.
Right.
And that's something that, like, we want to push students to empower them. We want them to feel empowered to make that choice, to make that call, to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't feel like you're in the right state of mind, or I don't think that you are readily prepared to operate a motor vehicle. My life is at stake here. And that's hard. Like, we
It is
completely
hard.
understand that.
It is hard and it's awkward. And just like you said, you don't want to upset the apple cart on the one hand. I think some good advice would be to sort of, there's times, of course, like somebody picks you up and you haven't seen the beforehand, you don't know what they've been doing or whatever, and you get in and then you have to do just what you said. But sometimes you have an idea before you get in the car that the person that's getting behind the wheel is probably not in the best state to be driving that car and then expects you to get in. And I think at that point, every parent would rather that you said at that point, you know what? I think I'm going to just, hitch a different ride, or I'm going to, call my mom and have her come get me or whatever, and say it in a way that's not hurtful, but also that gets the point across. Because, like you said, there was a group of high school girls out here, and I don't even know, this is true, I don't know that alcohol was even involved or anything like that, but it was a whole carload of young women, and they went down a street that had a big bump at the bottom, big dip, I suppose you would say. And the young driver lost control of the car and it flew into a telephone pole. And I think 5 of the girls were killed.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't have to, just like you said, the biggest distraction isn't necessarily the phone. It's all the people that are in the car and laughing and talking and whatever. And you have an inexperienced driver.
Correct.
So from a parent standpoint, what kind of things do you say to the parents when they're talking to their kids about this? Like things to like, don't do that. What kind of direction does SAID give them?
So I think, again, it comes to empowering. Um, Obviously, we want parents to push their children to make the right choices, to speak up and say, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I'm not good with this.
Mhm.
But I think also the conversation of, if you're in a bad spot, I might be upset. There might be consequences, but I promise you at the end of the day, I'm going to be so happy that you called.
Mhm.
and I get to see you the next morning.
Right.
I think a lot of the times students are so afraid that, okay, well, my mom is going to ground me. I don't want to make this choice because I'm going to be in trouble or I won't be able to hang out with friends anymore. But like, hallelujah, you get to hang out with friends at some point moving forward. So we always want that empowerment word. That is huge for us. We want to empower you to make good choices. We want to empower parents to tell their kids, mess ups are bound to happen. We're all human. We make mistakes, but feel free to have that call, that conversation, the hard talk, because at the end of the day, that could save your kid's life. If they really understand and you've had the conversation, call me. I'm going to be upset. We're going to get through it, but I have you at the end of the day.
Right.
And that was something huge for my dad too. He was like, again, I trust you fully. I know that you know what is expected and what you should and should not be doing. However, if you're in a bad spot, I'm going to be upset with you. Like, I'm allowed to be. I'm your parent. I want the best for you. And you're not making good choices. I'm going to be upset. But I'm going to come around and be like, I am so glad that I still have you at home.
Absolutely.
So we also want to push parents to not only have the hard conversations, but grow your understanding. Marijuana just became legalized. Do you know what systems that affect? Do you know what the 3 M's are? So we have no issue teaching the Shifting Gears curriculum to parents. We want everyone to be in the know. Knowledge is key.
Well, and because they don't know. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now and done a lot of THC related information to our parents out here. And for the most part, they really don't understand it. They have never been really schooled in it. They don't really understand it. So, we've shifted, just like shifting gears, we've shifted from the alcohol impairment part to this, and you've just added a whole nother layer. And maybe you did get the point across, designated driver, or, don't get in a car with a drunk driver or whatever. So many, I think, students probably don't even know 100% if the driver or whatever has had THC. And like you said, it stays in their system. So, it's really added another whole layer to this. And I know scare tactics I've known for a long time don't work. I know the crash car before prom and all that. It doesn't work. But I think a caveat for that is it doesn't work because it's a one and done. It's not a sustained effort. But I think a lot of people read that, or thought they understood that a crash car that someone died in or whatever now is in the front of your school is not impactful. That's not true. I do believe it is impactful. It's just that it's not a consistent message. It's kind of like, oh, and then you move on. And I remember when I was in college and I was coming home from something at UC and there was a crash, and I'm pretty sure it was probably an impaired driver, but this was way before THC was, this was years ago. But my point is, I will never get over that crash because my husband and I were dating and we were sort of first on the scene. I won't even go into the gory details, but that impacted me for the rest of my life and I never was much of a person to do any of that stuff anyway, but, so it's not like it's not impactful. And to see someone die in front of you is extremely impactful, but
Horrific.
you want to have something besides that going forward for educational purposes.
Right. And I'm honestly so excited. I'm working with one of the counties in Ohio right now who they had the same idea. Let's move away from a mock crash. This really isn't working the way that we want it to. And we actually kind of came up with an idea of a crash breakdown. Have the police and the EMS, and they wanted to bring in one of the Life Flight helicopters. And I said, instead of putting on this horrific crash where you have actors who probably aren't taking it very seriously, bring those people in and have them teach life-saving skills. Stop the Bleed is huge.
Oh,
These
I know.
students need to know,
It
like,
is.
prepare them for when it happens
Mhm.
and not just have this blind eye to, well, we're going to hope it doesn't. Prepare them for when it does
Right.
because
Exactly.
they're going, if it happens, and we hope it doesn't, but if it happens, they're going to be traumatized. They're not going to know
Mhm.
exactly what to do at this point, and there's a lot of things that can happen afterwards. So Stop the Bleed is huge.
It is a
I was
great
like,
program.
correct. I said, why not teach CPR to these students
Right,
so
right.
that they at least have an understanding? Um, you know, Tell them, bring in 911 callers and have them talk to these students
Mhm.
about what you need to say, what needs to happen in that phone call. Um, Again, so that they're prepared for
Mhm.
when it happens, and we hope it never does.
Well, and I think a lead up to it as well. I love Stop the Bleed. That's great. Um, they do great work. But 100% you're right that, when you see a crashed car back in the day in front of the school and everybody's like looking and they're looking for blood. I mean, seriously, they're, gawkers and whatever, but that doesn't really give them the whole picture at all. That doesn't talk about why this occurred. What if there was an impaired driver, if this was like Annie, somebody that crossed the double yellow and whatever. The lead up to it is, I think, so important. And then, of course, like you said, what do you do after? Everybody just sees on TV that there's been a crash. I'm talking about in a movie or something. And now
Right.
here comes the helicopter, and the person is unbelievably hurt, but they always make it in a movie, for the most part, particularly if they're one of the big actors. And it makes the teens and everyone else think that that's the way it always is. And it isn't like that at all. So I think that's a very valid point. I would love to see that happen in
I would
Ohio.
love to see that
Mhm.
change. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not taking away what you're trying to accomplish, but it's taking away the scare tactic and it's giving them, again,
right.
empowering you to know how to stop the bleed, how to perform CPR,
Mhm.
how to save somebody if it happens. Again, a huge word for us is empower. We want to empower these students, these teenagers. Um, Understand what's going on because you never know when you'll be in a car with your parent and they need Stop the Bleed.
They do, and really and truly, anybody at any time could need medical attention, and so you're helping not only with the shifting gears and everything with that, but that's the thing that is out even with our society, unfortunately, being as violent as it is right now. You never know when you're gonna be in that kind of a situation. So, yes, I think that's really smart, and I think that would make a lot of sense. And I think it would be impactful for the kids, like you said, to empower them to say, "I'm not a victim here. I can take charge. I can be part of, the solution, not the problem." So,
Correct.
yeah, I think that's really a great, way of looking at it and turning the trajectory from just, a crash car where you have no story, but to an actual occurrence.
Correct.
Um, yeah, I think that's a good thing because a lot of parents that I talk to say, well, I still think, a crash car is a good idea. You don't know how many people say that. And then I
Mm,
have to say, well, it's just a one and done. It needs to be more,
right.
but I think your idea and this idea is great. I do. I really do.
Correct. Well, and I got to kind of run it past, the law enforcement, my father.
Yeah.
But my sister is a nurse. She's an operating room nurse. So her and I got to talk a little bit about it. And I said, what do you think? And she said that the amount of time
Hmm.
that it takes for an EMS to get somewhere, like,
Hmm.
those are life-saving seconds.
Right.
So if someone in that car knows, and yes, we're gonna go into panic mode, that's how our bodies react. But
Hmm.
if someone, when you're on 911, they're talking you through it, they're calm, and you have this knowledge, you have no idea what those seconds can do to save somebody's life.
100% right. That's, this crash that I was talking about when I was in college very long ago. There were no cell phones. There were no phones at all. And I know when we pulled over with this crash and they had come around a bend and ran right into a telephone pole, there were 6 kids in the car. There were 4 in the back seat and 2 in the front, and the 2 in the front died later. I think one died on the scene and one died later. But my husband had to like run across the street, find knock on a door of a house, get the neighbor to call 911 and whatever. And I mean, yes, absolutely. That amount of time would have, but we didn't know. I mean, this was so serious. It was a terrible crash. And,
Right.
there was always they fell asleep. Yeah, I don't think so. But, I'm sure there was alcohol involved. It was after the UCXU game, which is a big game, was a big game in Cincinnati and still is, I guess. So, yeah, seconds matter. That's for sure. And helicopters can't always land right where the crash is either.
Right.
You have to everybody sees this open field and the helicopter gets them and takes them. And trauma centers are in the big cities. So if you're on one of the county highway roads like Annie was, that's all going to happen very fast.
Correct.
So, yeah, I'm a big advocate of Stop the Bleed. I was just looking at one of their pamphlets the other day and thinking, wow, we need to be teaching this. So
Correct.
I'm
Well,
on
and
this.
that's another thing, like we always talk about. So one of our toolkits is called Rock the Belt, and it's about seatbelt
Mhm.
usage. And there have been, since I started in this position, I went to the Lifesavers conference. I've been able to go to a couple prom events. I was able to hear from a parent who lost her son right before his senior year, and no one understands how much a
I
seatbelt
know.
protects your life.
Yep.
And it's crazy to me thinking that some people get in the car and it's the last thing on their mind.
I know.
Oh, it's the
Should be the
first thing on
first
my
thing.
mind.
I know.
Before I even start my car, my
I know.
seatbelt is
Well, and
on.
most of the cars beep to let you know you didn't put it on, and then I've heard
Yes.
of people turning that off. What are you, crazy? And that is the truth. In this situation, when I was in college, those two children would have been saved. Now, we didn't have airbags back then, but they would have probably been saved if they had had seatbelts on. We didn't even have seatbelts back then. That's
Right.
how far back this goes. But I'm just saying, yes, it is saving lives.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we're trying our best. I mean, we do something called the Quick Click Challenge.
Mhm.
We understand that teens want competition. How do you reach a teenage boy? You have to create some kind of competition that they can
Mhm.
really,
Get into.
sink their yes.
Mhm.
And it's all about getting in the car, putting the seatbelt on. How fast can you get through all four seats in a car? And I've watched it now a couple times between couple different events, and the students really love it. Whether they are really understanding that like this is for you to wear your seatbelt, or if it is just, oh, this is fun. Like we are
Mhm.
really enjoying the competition part, and like at least they're understanding a little bit of this is part of getting in a car as a seatbelt.
Well, and it's a privilege to drive a car. It is. It's a
Yes.
privilege. It's a privilege to get behind the wheel and have that kind of freedom and empowerment. So it goes along with the responsibility part. And I think that that's what parents really have to keep pushing on their teens, particularly with underdeveloped brains, is that this is a responsibility that goes along with a privilege. And, if you want to really enjoy your life, you can't take the chance of having one incident that ruins everything for you or for another person. We had a young man that we did a presentation with years ago, and he got into a car where somebody was intoxicated, and they were in a cemetery, strangely, running around on different and slammed into the wall of I guess, the maintenance building, I'm not really sure, and that man has been in a wheelchair ever since, and he was 18 at the time, and I mean, he was severely damaged, almost didn't make it, did make it, and then goes around trying to warn kids, about and he said he knew when he got behind the or within the car with the guy behind the wheel that it was probably not a safe situation, but again, it's awkward and then he spends the rest of his life in a wheelchair because of it.
Right.
So it's a privilege, but it's a responsibility. And you mentioned mental health earlier on, and that is such a big part of what the kids are going through right now is their mental health. And, we've kind of instilled in them that, this anxiety it's somewhat normal, but it also has to be dealt with, that you can't. So something that they might get into that will create that kind of mental instability and guilt and you name it for the rest of their lives, it is not worth one fun time
Right.
acting crazy, you know? So,
Well, and they have a sense of like, I am invincible.
oh, yeah,
There is no
harm.
consciousness to
Right.
how much life you have left because you're so young and you're like, I am ready to have some fun.
Mhm.
I was so thankful. I actually just went to the Ohio Traffic Safety Summit. Um, and we got to hear from Ross Chastain, who's a NASCAR driver.
Oh, yeah.
And one of his things is protect your melon because they're a watermelon farming family.
Oh,
Um, and which is a great,
that's great. Yeah,
it's a fun slogan. And I mean,
it
it
is.
sticks with you, protect your melon.
I love
Um,
that. Yeah.
but he was telling us a little bit about one of his friends from high school. That same idea is now paralyzed in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
Um, wa- was not wearing a seatbelt. And it's those split-second decisions that can be life-altering. Um, I mean, teenagers, again, they think they're invincible, and it's like you kind of are, but you kind of are not.
Right.
Like, you are young, you wanna have fun, you have so much life to live, but make choices so that you do have so much life to live.
Absolutely. I know another story when my kids were in high school and it was prom, and this young man was driving his mother's minivan. I mean, it was totally innocent. There wasn't anything going on, but he had 4 or 5 kids in the car, way too young to probably be able to do that. And he went down one of the roads and he lost control of the car and it went down an embankment. And because the girl that was sitting next to him or whatever did not have a seatbelt on, she died. And that
Right.
young man, his now is, probably in his 50s, he had to live with that his whole life that, that had happened on a night when it should have been so much fun and something nice to remember back. That changed his whole life. So it happens. And the seatbelts are so important. That's the best start. But, non-impaired driver is, of course, the second. And
Correct.
they have to, they're young. They haven't had that driving experience. Like I said, they don't know how to swerve. Or, they lose control. They overcorrect. Yeah, well, I think this is great. I think this program is great. I love peer to peer because I know that that's what works. And I mean, I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing and for being on today, of course. But we will have the website for SAD in the show notes. And if you think of something else you would like to have in there as well, we'll certainly put that in. Parents need to be able to know where to go for resources. And SAD has a great website with all kinds of information. So, what would
Yes.
you recommend for school to get into schools? That's not easy. I know that.
Yeah.
Some schools embrace you and some go, hey, we don't need that. We've got this covered. I love that one. We've got this all covered. No, not really. But so is that kind of hard?
It's something that we struggle with. Like you said, like some schools are ready with open arms and they are prepared to just have someone come in and teach shifting gears, and some schools are like, no, no, thank you.
I know.
Um, it's definitely something that we're trying to kind of figure out. Um, we had a conversation about who needs to get trained with shifting gears, who can train others on it.
Mhm.
And we lean towards SROs all the time. They're in the schools. They
Yep.
are the law enforcement for these students. These students get to see them every day.
Mhm.
They're going to listen to them a little bit more. But we're also right now we're trying to reach out to school. What are they called? Oh my goodness. The
Something to do with the I don't know. I'm thinking maybe the school nurses or the health teachers, or that's where
the
usually I've approached them.
the guidance counselors is
Oh,
what I was
guidance.
thinking
Okay.
of. Um, what I've found out is a lot of the schools, the guidance counselors are the ones that push programs. They're the ones
Good
that are
point.
able to be advocates of, hey,
Mhm.
this is something that works and is working in other schools, and they take it up to the principal or the superintendent,
Hmm.
whoever their higher up is. So we're currently working towards getting to these guidance counselors. School nurses are huge for us. But like I said, SROs, school nurses, school guidance counselors. I do actually have quite a little group of admin workers who believe in what we are trying to achieve here. So
Right.
you never know who could be an advocate to get into a school.
Well, and
So
I think I know I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Parents are more powerful than they think. And if parents would get together and say, this is a great program and we want our high school to utilize this. If you had enough parents that were pushing something like this, believe me, it would happen.
Correct.
Hmm.
You never know where an advocate could come from that would get the school to say, okay, you know what? We need this.
Right.
And we're trying every avenue. I had even brought up, what about the um, athletic directors? I
Uh-huh.
mean, you have so many student athletes that
Hmm.
are having fun. I mean,
Hmm.
they're always doing something.
Right.
So I mean, I was a student athlete myself. I played college volleyball. So I know the athletics, the back and forth of it. And I
Hmm.
think that coaches and athletic directors could be huge advocates in schools. So there's so many avenues.
Well, and I think too that the admin people generally will say that, they're too busy. They've already got their own programs in place, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be, it can be in the health class for sure. Problem is, they only get one of those usually for an entire 4 years, and it's freshman year for like a half of semester or a semester. It's not enough, but there's clubs and there's other outside things like the athletics where they're getting them together anyway. Why not? Why
Correct.
not bring these things up? It might save a life. So, Taylor, I'm telling you, this has been great. I so appreciate it. And we're coming up on a hard stop, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time. And hopefully, we'll have some good listeners here that will, come back and share this with other people. So, and again, I will put your website on our show notes. So just let me know. And I think if Matthew's correct, we might be able to launch this next week. So I'm
Awesome.
excited and thank you again. Is there anything you wanted to share at the end?
Thank you for having me. We
Abs-
really appreciate it. We appreciate you putting SAD out there as much as possible. And for anyone listening, please feel free to reach out to me. My contacts on the website as the Ohio State coordinator. I am always open to having open conversations and communicating with just about anybody.
Well, that's great. So thank you again for the work you do and good luck with all of this. We'll be watching. So
Awesome. Thank you.
thank you for listening to this episode of Step Up to Save Our Children with our guest, Taylor Small from Students Against Destructive Decisions. Today's conversation reminds us that prevention starts with awareness, communication, and giving young people the tools to make safer decisions before a tragedy happens. If this episode encouraged or informed you, please share it with other parents, teachers, school administrators, or your own teen driver. These conversations truly can save lives. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow Step Up to Save Our Children on YouTube and Apple Podcasts for more important discussions focused on protecting and empowering our youth. Until next time, keep stepping up, speaking out, and helping save our children. Thank you.